So let's talk about India. Right now, it feels like the country is in high gear. The start of 2025 has been packed with huge economic news, major policy shifts, and some incredible tech breakthroughs. So, what does it all really mean? We're going to connect the dots on all the key moments from the last month to get a real sense of where the country is heading. Let's dive in.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. We've got four key areas. We'll start by checking the economic pulse. Then we'll look at how the nation is building itself from within, see its growing role on the world stage, and finally, we'll explore the cutting-edge innovation frontier.
All right, first up, the economic pulse. Now, the headline story is definitely strong growth, but what's really fascinating are the shifts happening just under the surface.
6.6%. That's the powerful growth number the United Nations is projecting for India's economy in 2025. And according to them, what's fueling this? Well, it's a mix of strong consumer spending and a massive push in infrastructure. It really positions India as the growth engine for the entire South Asian region.
And it's not just the UN saying this. I mean, take a look at the consensus here. You've got Moody's being pretty bullish at 7%, SBI a bit more cautious at 6.3, but you see the pattern, right? The big takeaway is the same across the board. India is on a serious high-growth path. This kind of broad agreement paints a really clear picture of a resilient and expanding economy.
Now, this is where things get really interesting. For the past few years, the government has been the one spending big on things like roads and bridges. That's the capex you see there. But that's changing. Goldman Sachs thinks that government spending growth is going to slow down. And at the same time, data from SBI research shows the private sector is stepping up in a huge way, now making up over 70% of new investment plans. So we're seeing this crucial handover from public to private investment really starting to drive the economy.
Okay, and if we dig into some of the latest numbers, we see even more good signs. Retail inflation? It's cooling off, which is a big relief for everyone's wallet. The trade deficit is getting smaller, which is always great for stability. And e-way bills, which are basically a great way to track how many goods are moving around the country, are hitting near a 2-year high. All of this together suggests the economy has a really solid foundation heading into the year. So, the economy's humming along, but what's happening inside the country? Let's take a look at how India's kind of building itself from the inside out. This is a nation in the making. This is a huge deal. According to research from SBI, for the very first time, India's rural poverty rate has dropped below the 5% mark, down to 4.86%. Researchers are saying this massive drop is thanks to a mix of higher spending among the poorest households and the impact of government welfare programs. But when we talk about poverty, the story is never that simple. There's a really critical debate going on about how it's even measured. Some critics argue the official poverty line is set so incredibly low that it's not really measuring poverty at all. It's measuring destitution or extreme want. It's just a really important reminder that behind every statistic, there are complex, real human stories. At the same time, you've got this massive infrastructure boom happening. And honestly, there's no better example than the Indian Railways. They've already spent over 2 lakh crore rupees. That's 2 trillion rupees just this fiscal year. This incredible investment is paying for everything from brand new lines to those next-gen Vande Bharat trains.
And speaking of big changes, January also brought a truly historic legal reform. Uttarakhand became the first state since independence to bring in a uniform civil code. This code makes some sweeping changes, like banning certain personal law practices and, really importantly, guaranteeing equal property rights for women across all religions. It also makes online registration for marriages and divorces a must, though it's worth noting that it does exempt scheduled tribes.
But it's not all smooth sailing. With all this rapid change, some major challenges are popping up. For example, get this. The latest government education report revealed a jaw-dropping drop in school enrollment of over 12.2 million students between 2018 and 2024. Now, officials say part of this is just better data keeping, but a number that big, well, it definitely points to a critical issue that needs a lot of attention. So all this transformation at home is happening while India is also carving out a new role for itself on the world stage. Let's zoom out and take a look. Okay, let's talk military power. According to the 2025 Global Firepower Index, India is holding steady as the world's 4th most powerful military. Now, it's important to remember this index looks at over 60 different things, but it's all about conventional forces, so no nuclear weapons included. Still, this ranking puts India in a very elite club, right behind the US, Russia, and China.
But the index doesn't just give a single number, it gives us a really balanced look. On the one hand, you have these incredible strengths, especially its people. India is number 2 in the world for available manpower, and number 1 for the sheer number of people reaching military age every year. But on the flip side, the report points out some real vulnerabilities, like a low ranking for helicopter carriers and challenges related to high oil consumption and external debt.
And global influence isn't just about tanks and planes. It's about building relationships. And India has been incredibly active on that front. Just think about the last month. They're boosting maritime security with France, hosting Indonesia's president for Republic Day, teaming up with the UN on big data, and even working with the US to build advanced naval tech. Each one of these moves shows a country that's actively weaving a network of powerful alliances. And that naval tech collaboration is actually a great segue into our final section, the innovation frontier. This is where India is making some really incredible leaps, both in high-tech manufacturing and in fundamental scientific discovery.
You hear this term a lot in India right now, Atmanirbhar, which means self-reliance. And in technology, that push is really picking up steam. In space, ISRO just pulled off its first satellite docking. That's a huge step for building future space stations. And it's not just the government. The private startup Pixel launched its own commercial satellite constellation. Back on Earth, the Tata Group is gearing up to make made-in-India semiconductor chips by 2026, and agencies are already working with top universities to develop the chipsets we're all going to need for 6G. But innovation isn't always about circuits and code. Sometimes it's about discovering the incredible world right under our noses. And in January, scientists announced a discovery in the forests of the Northeast that is just, well, it's stunning.
Get this. They identified an entirely new species of pangolin, the Indo-Burmese pangolin. And through genetic analysis, they figured out that this species has been on its own distinct evolutionary path for about 3.4 million years. It's an incredible find that not only adds to our knowledge, but also really drives home the urgent need for conservation, especially since pangolins are one of the most trafficked animals on Earth.
So you add it all up, a booming economy, poverty on the decline, growing global clout, and mind-blowing tech breakthroughs. India is clearly moving at a dynamic pace in 2025. And it leaves us with this one big question to chew on. As the nation's economic, military, and technological power continues to grow, what's going to be its greatest test? Managing the immense challenges of development at home, or navigating an increasingly complex and tricky world?